Well, testing is probably the answer. We just heard from Nassim Taleb, too. I think everybody comes around to this. If you're testing more frequently, it helps the economy keep going because there's not that uncertainty. There's not the forced 14-day quarantines and some of these issues. We just heard from United Airlines last week that they're going to start trials on select routes of having passengers tested before they go places. They can do rapid testing that's done in 20 minutes where you get your results back. So somebody shows up 3 hours early for an international flight. Are you considering doing that at Ryanair, too?
I don't think so, but we certainly wouldn't rule it out, Becky. I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to persuade European governments to have much more mass testing. I mean, I think the problem is a lot of countries don't recognise these 20-minute antigen tests. They're not as reliable as the PCR testing. I mean, I think what we should be having is, no restrictions, certainly within Europe, no restrictions on short-haul air travel within Europe for those passengers who can demonstrate they have a negative test within 74 hours of departure. I think you're going to have chaos at the airports if you have people showing up for an antigen test. And what happens if you get a false positive reading? The passenger then has to offload, you cancel the flight, what happens? So I think that's a real challenge. I think a much more logical medium-term solution is mass testing. Everybody gets tested within 72 hours of departure, and you have a written, if you like, confirmation from your doctor that you tested negative within 72 hours. Then certainly on short-haul intra-European travel, I think we can go back flying without restrictions and quarantines, because it's not so much the testing that's the challenge. It's the governments constantly changing the rules or bringing in a lockdown, opening up a lockdown. I mean, 10 days ago, Britain added the Canary Islands to its green list for travel. We had a huge surge in bookings, 14 times the normal volume we're taking, and yet 7 days later, Britain introduces a lockdown where it says nobody can fly unless it's for essential reasons or for work. So it's the chopping and changing that's killing the industry, the hospitality industry here in Europe, not the testing.
Michael, though, I want to go back to the testing issue, and I appreciate the idea of mass testing and wanting the government to pay for it. What I don't understand is why the airline industry, given the confidence that you need from customers to want to get on that plane, and by the way, not just over the next several months, but I imagine this is going to be a longer-term issue, even post-vaccine, potentially 12 months, 18, 24 months out, why the airlines are not saying we are either going to invest in the testing ourselves. Some analysts have suggested it would cost you $40 to $50 more per ticket. Or whether you would want the government or push the government to effectively subsidize that. Effectively, by the way, if the airlines did something like this, it would act to some degree as a surveillance program that would be benefiting all of society.
Well, let me give you the broad economics, Andrew, as follows. Our average fare is 40 euros. We simply can't fund the 40 euro test, even if currently the PCR tests are around 80 euros a pop. We can't do it. Our customers won't travel at 40 euros. If we have to charge them another 80 euros, so the fare will become 120 euros. And that's not going to work. Also, putting the onus on the airlines to do the testing means the testing happens too late and you have too much confusion at airports. Like what happens at the airport, where you've lots of people milling around, we have a positive case. All of a sudden, everybody comes in close contact with a positive case. It's a recipe for disaster. What we need is, and what our economies need, not just our airline industry, is mass testing so that you're testing about 20% of your population on a weekly basis. You're testing the entire population every 5 or 6 weeks. You're identifying the people who have tested positive. They isolate for that 2-week period, and that's the way our economies get on top of this. Because this is wider than just the airlines going back flying. How do we reopen our restaurants? How do you reopen your pubs? How do you get people back to some kind of normal daily life? And it's got to be mass testing.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.